I thought it was going to be an ordinary grocery run, but as I walked down the pasta aisle, I noticed a woman staring at me. Little did I know that this Karen would make my shopping experience a living hell and push me to my breaking point. Here's how it all went down. It was an ordinary day, and I decided to go grocery shopping. I headed to my usual store, the one I always go to because it's convenient and the prices are reasonable. I grabbed a cart and started to browse the aisles, picking up a few items that I needed. As I was walking down the pasta aisle, I noticed a woman staring at me. She had short hair and was wearing a bright pink shirt. I didn't think much of it and continued shopping. A few minutes later, I heard someone calling out, "Excuse me!" I turned around and saw the same woman from before, walking quickly towards me. "Can you tell me where the crackers are?" she asked me. I told her I wasn't sure, but that I thought they might be in the next aisle over. She didn't seem satisfied with my answer and started asking me more questions like what time the store closed and whether they had any gluten-free options. I tried to answer her as best I could, but I could tell that she was getting annoyed with me. Suddenly, she demanded to speak to the manager, insisting that I worked at the store. I was confused and told her that I didn't work there. That's when things started to escalate. She accused me of lying and demanded to know my employee ID number. I told her again that I didn't work there and that she must have mistaken me for someone else. But she wouldn't listen. She started yelling and causing a scene, attracting the attention of other shoppers. At this point, I was starting to feel really frustrated and embarrassed. I didn't understand why this woman was so convinced that I worked at the store. I tried to explain myself, but she just kept interrupting me and demanding that I be fired. It was a stressful situation, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. "Ma'am, I really don't work here," I said, hoping my voice sounded as even as possible. But Karen wasn't having it. She pointed a finger in my face and accused me of being disrespectful. I tried to explain that I was just a customer, like her, but she wasn't interested in listening. As we continued arguing, I could feel my heart rate increasing. I was starting to get really annoyed with this woman's stubbornness. I mean, how hard was it to believe that someone didn't work at a store? But Karen seemed to think that she knew everything. She started making statements that would make anyone's blood boil. "I know you work here," she said, her voice rising. "You're just lying to me because you don't want to help me." "I'm not lying," I said, feeling my frustration mounting. "I really don't work here. Look, I don't even have a name tag or an apron or anything." I gestured towards myself, hoping that she would see reason, but Karen wasn't interested in reason. She was interested in winning. "You're just trying to get out of doing your job," she said, her voice now filled with disdain. "Well, I won't stand for it. You need to tell me where the crackers are right now." I felt my blood pressure rising. This woman was impossible to reason with. I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "Ma'am, I really don't know where the crackers are. And even if I did, I wouldn't be able to help you because I'm not an employee here. Now can you please leave me alone?" Karen didn't seem to be listening. She started making more demands, like getting the manager involved and firing me on the spot. I was at my wit's end. I didn't know what to do. I looked around the store, hoping that someone would intervene and help me out. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, Karen pulled out her trump card. "I know the owner of this store," she said, her voice dripping with entitlement. "He's a personal friend of mine. I'll have your job for this." I felt a wave of panic wash over me. Was this woman really going to ruin my life over a misunderstanding? I tried to think of a way out of the situation, but I was drawing a blank. I felt trapped, like a mouse caught in a corner with no escape. As Karen continued to make demands and accuse me of lying, my frustration and anger started to boil over. I couldn't believe that this woman was still insisting that I worked at the store, even after I had explained multiple times that I didn't. I felt like I was stuck in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. "You're not listening to me," I said, my voice starting to shake with anger. "I don't work here. I'm just a customer, like you. Can you please leave me alone?" But Karen wasn't having it. She was still convinced that I was lying and demanded that I be fired. "I want you to get the manager right now," she said, her tone becoming more and more aggressive. "I'm going to get you fired for this." I took a deep breath and tried to stay calm, but it was getting harder and harder. I could feel my heart racing and my palms sweating. "Ma'am, I really don't work here," I said, my voice now trembling. "There's nothing more I can do to help you. Can you please just leave me alone?" But Karen wasn't interested in leaving me alone. She was interested in getting her way. "I know that you work here," she said, her voice now raised to a shout. "I'm not leaving until you get me what I want." At this point, I had had enough. I felt like I was about to snap. "You need to stop harassing me," I said, my voice now rising. "I don't work here. I'm not going to get you the manager. I'm not going to help you find the crackers. I'm just a customer, and you're making my shopping experience a living hell. Can you please just go bother someone else?" Karen's face turned red with anger. "I demand to speak to the manager right now," she said, her voice now a low growl. "And I demand that you be fired for your disrespectful behavior." and that's when it happened. I don't know what came over me, but I just couldn't take it anymore. I snapped. "I'm not going to get you the manager," I said, my voice now a shout. "I'm not going to get you the crackers. I'm not going to do anything for you, because I don't work here. And you know what? Even if I did work here, I wouldn't help you. You're rude, entitled, and completely out of line. I don't know how you go through life treating people like this, but it's not okay. You need to leave me alone and go bother someone else." Karen's eyes widened with shock. She had clearly never been spoken to like this before. "How dare you talk to me like that?" she said, her voice now a screech. "I'm going to report you to the manager and have you fired for your disrespectful behavior." But I didn't care. I felt like I had finally stood up for myself, and it felt amazing. "Go ahead and report me," I said, my voice now a whisper. "I don't care. I don't work here, and I never will. And even if I did work here, I wouldn't want to work for a company that treats its customers like this. Now please, just leave me alone." Karen stood there for a few more seconds, her mouth hanging open in shock. Then she turned and stormed away, muttering under her breath about how she was going to get me fired. But I didn't care. I felt like I had won a small victory, and it was all thanks to standing up for myself. After Karen stormed away, I just stood there for a moment, trying to catch my breath. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had never been in a situation like that before, and it was definitely not something I wanted to experience again. As I stood there, trying to calm down, I noticed a few other shoppers looking at me with concern. I guess they had heard the whole thing. I gave them a small smile, trying to let them know that I was okay, even though I really wasn't. Just then, a store employee came over to me. "Are you okay?" she asked, looking at me with concern. I nodded, still feeling a bit shaky. "Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for asking." The employee smiled at me. "That woman was crazy," she said, shaking her head. "I don't know what her problem was, but you handled it really well." I felt a small sense of pride wash over me. Maybe I had handled it well. Maybe I had stood up for myself in a way that I never had before. Maybe I was stronger than I thought. The employee continued talking to me, asking me if I needed anything and offering to help me find what I was looking for. I appreciated her kindness, but I just wanted to get out of there. I had had enough for one day. As I walked out of the store, I couldn't help but replay the whole thing in my head. I thought about what I could have done differently, what I should have said, how I should have handled it. But in the end, I knew that I had done the best I could. I had stood up for myself in a tough situation, and that was something to be proud of. LOL, what a crazy Karen. Good for them for standing up for themselves, though. I don't know if I could have kept my cool like she did. You could really meet a Karen anywhere. Anyone else have a crazy Karen experience in the grocery store? This story is about how we met and dealt with an entitled jerk on our first day in Barcelona. So I, 34M, went on a summer holiday trip with my brother, 32M, our mutual friend, Ty, fake name, 30M, and my friend Luke, 25M. We decided to go to Barcelona and made plans at the beginning of the year, with Ty being responsible for the money. We also decided to stay in a hostel as we didn't know if hotel cramping was allowed in Europe. Plus, we wanted to save money on room and board. Then, we made sure that we had €75 day for each of us. The norm is €50 day. My grandma proposed that as it would serve as our safety net. We all bought our tickets and made a list of everything we wanted to see as well as what we wanted to do together. Now, let me tell you about my group. My brother AJ is my best and truest friend. He was the first person I came out to, and when I lost my virginity, both to hilarious effects. He's straight and became a fierce ally of the community after my coming out. He's also a full-time dad and works security on the weekends in his city's gay village. He's a bouncer. He'd always wanted to go to Barcelona, and he and his ex-wife, they are still good friends despite the divorce, also made a list of things he can do and bring back for their daughters. Our friend Ty is our childhood child that my grandma adopted as one of her own. It's something she does with all our friends, and Ty was no different. She even offered him shelter when he was kicked out of his mom's house while tearing into her. He wanted to go to check out the day-to-day, as he always thought about moving there. My grandma was helping him with saving money for that, as well as his transition to Barcelona. She is very big on her grandbabies getting worldly experience. Finally, there's Luke. He's a Chinese primary school teacher who recently came out to me. Like Ty, he wants to see the world and figured that Barcelona would be a good place to start. I helped him with his savings as his teaching salary is a bit lower than mine. It's a known secret. Okay, let's get to the story. We all arrived in Barcelona at night at different times and made our way to the hostel. It was late, so we couldn't check in until the afternoon. That didn't bother us as we took the time to plot and plan everything, only where we want to eat together and what we want to do alone. We all agreed to have breakfast and dinner together. At around noon or so, we finally got to our room, and it was a room for 12 people travelers, 6 bunk beds. We put our stuff away and head out for some food. When he got back, we met him. a fellow traveler who looks to be in his 20s and maybe European. It's a safe bet. For the sake of the story, let's refer to him as BB, baby, for reasons you're going to see. As we got back into our room, we saw BB going through our things. AJ was the first to speak and demanded to know why he was going through our stuff. BB explained that he was looking for something cute to wear for the gay bars. He then had the nerve to say that it's in the spirit of the hostel to share. Now, AJ hates people touching his things. I don't even touch his stuff. And he told BB just that. But BB only doubled down and said that it wasn't a big deal and they'll get it back when he's done with it. He then tried to take one of the apparel that Ty bought for him. AJ likes wearing them because it feels nice. Something to know about me and my brother. In his words, I'm a talker. I will either talk you out of something, make a colorful threat that will give you pause, or simply tell you what I'm going to do before doing it. AJ is not a talker. He tells you once then act. So when BB wouldn't put it down, AJ just took a step forward and cracked him across the face. I yelled at AJ, and AJ simply shrugged and said, I asked him to put it back. BB tried to tell on us, but when he told the receptionist what he did, he was told to leave. He got mad and demanded to know why. The receptionist just gave him an, "Are you serious?" look, and simply told him that he doesn't have the right to other people's things. However, she gave all of us a warning. Thank God for that. But that wasn't the last time we encountered BB. Much later that night, after we got done exploring and doing our thing, my brother and I went to some museums and Ty and Luke went to a bathhouse. We meet up at a club. I didn't want to go as I don't like clubs, but everybody convinced me. I'm glad I did because we encountered BB again, which pissed off Luke and Ty. They told us that BB spotted them in the bathhouse and followed them inside. It went downhill from there as BB wouldn't leave them alone and kept trying to have sex with them, even after being politely rejected. He kept saying that they owned him for getting him kicked out of the hostel and it was the least they could do. Eventually, BB got kicked out after another patron reported him for harassment, and, as it turns out, he followed them here, to us. Hearing all of that, I walked to him and asked if he has something against us. I pointed out that there are millions of people in this city, so I wanted to know why he felt the need to bother a group of foreigners who were just minding their own business. BB had the nerve to say that all of this was our fault because we got him kicked out of the hostel and that we should have let him wear our clothes. When I pointed out how entitled that sounded, he made it clear that this was the hill he was going to die on. He even said, "You should be lucky that I find any of you interesting enough to follow." Oh, really now? I turned to my group and asked them if I could use 500 euros from our stash. When they asked me why, I gave AJ a grin and all he said was, "Oh crap." I looked at the bartender and asked him if he knew BB. He said yes, and that he's always trying to make people buy him drinks, particularly foreigners/travelers/tourists. I said excellent, and asked for 2 bottles of scotch, my brother and Ty's drink of choice. I hate scotch. And 5 glasses, 4 shot glasses and 1 regular one. I gave my group each a glass and their scotch and the bartender one. As BB asked me for a glass, I told him to wait his turn. I took a small slip and told my group to take a shot. I asked the bartender if he would take a shot and gave him a wink. He took a shot and I refilled my cup to the top. "You want your shot?" BB gave me a smug smirk and demanded it, so I did. I flung the drink square in his face. He screamed and started swearing at me as everybody surrounding us started to laugh. The bartender laughed the loudest, as he never saw anybody do that to BB. I quickly took a shot with my group, refilled the bartender's cup, and told him to wait a moment as I refilled my glass before looking at BB. I waited for him to calm down before I spoke. "I'm not a huge fan of bullies, so you have until the bartender finished that shot to leave me and my family alone, or you get another drink in your face." BB started screaming at me. He claimed that he didn't have to listen to me and that he had a right to free things. All the while, the bartender started taking a shot. Without saying a word, the bartender finished his shot and I flung the drink in his face again. Everybody started laughing again as he started to scream and cry. We all took another shot and I refilled my glass and glared at BB. This time I wasn't smiling. Have I made my point? BB looked at me, my family, the bartender, and everybody in the surrounding area. It was a big bar. And tried to say something else. Only I didn't let him. For the 3rd time, I flung the drink in his face and screamed at the top of his lungs before running out of the bar. Everybody cheered as he left. I guess he wasn't liked at that bar. We got praised for what we did, and the bartender awarded us with a round of preferred drinks. We even ended up hanging out with other travelers and making friends with a few of them. Even better, we're on our 5th day, and we haven't run into BB. Fingers crossed as we staying here for a couple of weeks. Wow, what a crazy story. I can't believe that entitled jerk had the nerve to go through their things and then follow them to the club. But the way the group dealt with him was hilarious. I love how they took matters into their own hands and gave him a taste of his own medicine. Definitely a wild start to their trip in Barcelona. People and corporation names will be changed for personal and privacy reasons. For a quick context, I used to work for 5 years at a call center we will name Ultima Thule. Following my induction back in 2016, I was assigned to a campaign with codename Cube, which handles customer and tech support related to a driving app. I remember it because it was really badly managed. People were constantly rotated, and we had at least 4 managers until the end of Cube, which I will explain much later. On to the main story. It is January 2017. I was assigned to a new work team after my first supervisor and some of my co-workers were fired due to some sketchy fraud. I only survived because I barely interacted with anybody, even to my supervisor. Shortly after starting with this new team, I hit it off with 3 co-workers we will name Carl, Andre, and Brianda. As the 4 of us were together, I see that along came a 5th co-worker, about 10 years older than us and looking like Gollum. We'll call him Frank. I've seen him around, interacting with my then supervisor until his firing, but he was none of my business at the time. When Frank came to us, he came with an arrogant attitude, demanding us to shut up and to continue doing our respective jobs. I looked at Frank in disgust. As I talked my mind, "Who do you think you are?" He then comes to me, looks to me dead in the eye, and says, I know your team was kicked for committing fraud. You do as I say, or I will have HR take you out." I was like, what the heck? He is threatening me for no reason, and I didn't tell him anything. Frank then leaves while looking at Carl as if he stepped on a dog's fresh turd. Following the whole ordeal, Carl messaged me through HipChat and asked me what happened with my team. I told him that my team was sacked because of some fraudulent activity regarding the use of that certain app. He then replies that some guys of his team were also kicked out for the same reason, and that he was looking at him in disgust because Carl is gay. Andre then joins the conversation and adds that since he became floor support, Frank has been on a power trip and demanding everybody to pretty much work like robots. Lastly, Brianda joins and mentions that not only does he do this to their team, but also barges into the other teams, terrorizing them into silence. Carl then carries on and adds that people tried to report him with their supervisors and even HR, but they were unsuccessful because they were all playing favorites with him. We've continued working and chatting in the meantime. Then, come March 2017, Bruce, then operations manager, resigned, and Michael, an operations manager from another campaign, took over. A lot of changes came along with his advent, and as a result, our team was split up. I was assigned to another team, and Frank was changed to the morning shift. Ergo, I wouldn't have to put up with his attitude for the time being. Fast forward to early 2018. New changes came within the campaign, and you know what it means. Team changes, staff and shift rotation, and the arrival of a new manager, Denise. By this time, both Brianda and Andre were no longer employees of Ultima Thule. I was teamed up with Carl again, and newcomers Victoria, Astrid, and Gunther were assigned to our crew. But terror also came back with the return of Frank to our shift. It turns out that the new manager got word that Frank has already been doing his thing with the morning shift, and she was not having it. Because of this, on orders from Denise, Frank was demoted to CS agent, returned to the afternoon shift, and was assigned to our team as the only one available for him. Even in his new role, Frank was still behaving like the entitled jerk I first met back in 2017, but this time, he has become more vindictive and apathetic. Anyhow, he got along with Gunther, and their reign of terror continued, at least in our team. Victoria was the only one of us who was on civil terms with Frank at the time, while Astrid worked with him since they were together in the morning shift. During this period, things took a turn for the worse when Victoria was appointed as a new member of floor support. Every time Victoria was trying to do her job, Frank would continue to upstage her, using his long-time knowledge as his excuse. Actually, he would do the same with all other team leaders. One of these days, I was in a bad mood following a dispute with my supervisor over an unpaid day of work. The final straw came when I returned from lunch and witnessed how Frank called Victoria a useless peasant. This is when I snapped and yelled at him to shut up and all the times he made this workplace hell, and if it weren't because he got all the staff eating on the palm of his hand, I would have personally put you out of your misery. My supervisor saw this, broke the dispute, and Victoria, Frank, and I were called to HR to testify on what happened. Expecting the worst, as Frank was still friends with the HR staff, I was eventually called, and Denise was there, alongside the HR representative who took this case. After having Frank and Victoria give their version of the entire incident, and Frank trying to convince them to fire me, I gave my version of what happened. Denise also brought some video evidence that Frank was the jerk here. Both Denise and the HR representative eventually let me go with only a verbal warning on foul language, while Victoria demoted herself to CS agent because of the trauma she suffered. Frank was eventually suspended for a week and sent to the graveyard shift, to which Gunther followed suit. The rest of the period was peaceful for the most part. Fast forward to March 2020. Me, Carl, and Astrid were still in the fold, but Victoria eventually quit. Frank and Gunther were changed to the afternoon shift again. At this time, we were all little to no contact with them because of all the nonsense Frank put us through. It goes without saying that the COVID-19 pandemic already hit and we were all in the process of going home office, which means we wouldn't have to have any contact with Frank at all. Time had passed, and we were successfully settled into our respective houses. The only contact we would have would be between our team, our supervisor, and our floor supports. But this didn't last much longer, as on June 1st, we received a link for a Microsoft Teams meeting. To keep it short, we were informed that because of the multiple complications the pandemic has put the campaign through, the client who connected the company with Ultima Thule decided to put an end to Cube. I was offered to continue working in another campaign and actually accepted, but Carl, Gunther, Astrid, and Frank were all dismissed and lost their jobs. And now, November 2022, for the final time skip, I stopped working at Ultima Thule since June 2021 to join another company. Carl threw a small party at his place, inviting me and former co-workers Victoria, Andre, Astrid, and Gunther. And to my surprise, even Denise was invited. While having an alcohol-driven pleasant conversation, it was at this point that Gunther revealed Frank's fate. Gunther told us that he had cut Frank out of his life, months after they were dismissed, as Frank was going obnoxious and blaming it on us for his current situation. He also revealed that Frank had been unable to find another job, unable to continue paying rent, and he was eventually evicted. So Frank is now homeless. That was the last time we ever knew about him. I don't feel bad about his fate, but I don't feel like rejoicing either. In the end, the only victim here was Frank, who did all this to himself. I can't believe someone could be so entitled and vindictive in the workplace, but it's always satisfying to see karma catch up to someone who deserves it. I hope the rest of the team is doing well now.